What's up, guys? It's Brent with Lykins Motorsports. Been working on Mr. Mark's small block Ford tunnel port this morning. Got the engine plate on and water pump, dry sump pump mandrel. This has been this has been a pain in my booty. So I didn't plan on using the motor plate to begin with. I planned on using AVA's small block Ford. I know you can't see through the bag, but just kind of picture it in your head. So they have a mounting bracket for the dry sump pumps that goes on the driver's side, and it kind of mounts to the fuel pump boss on the timing cover, and then also it reinforces itself on the water pump. The thing is, that works really good for a 4-stage pump, but I ordered a 5-stage pump, and nobody thought to say, hey Brent, this may not work with a 5-stage pump. So the pump was so long that it just basically contacted the block, and I had no room for an inlet fitting. So after several days of going back and forth with AVA, we decided to send the pump back, change out the bracket for a blade, and then switch to a front motor plate. And Mr. Mark said, yeah, that's okay with me. So that's what we're going to do. That will allow me to space this pump out a little bit further away from the block if I need to. And it'll also kind of let the pump stick out a little bit further. Dry sump situations are always a pain, and some companies, so I really like AVA pumps. I really like them. They pull a ton of vacuum on the crankcase, and you know, I always like to try to keep it in one company and just buy everything from one company and not have any issues. But sometimes you just can't get away from that stuff. On the FE stuff, there's just not a lot of dry sump setups, and most of the time you're in your own custom fabrication world trying to get the FE stuff going. But what we're going to do, the pump is on its way back to AVA. They're going to swap it out, and I'm going to bring it back, and we'll probably hang, let's say, the tank on this side and the remote oil filter on this side, and then just run our hoses. And some of these will be temporary hoses. For one thing, the tank does not sit on the motor plate in the car. I guess it could if you had room, but this is just going to be a temporary setup for the dyno, and then Mr. Mark's chassis shop can take over from there. So got that done. Got OJ parked. OJ's ready for the dyno, but I'm missing my, let's see, the hub adapter's on its way. It should actually be here today or tomorrow. I got the motor plates in, so got a motor plate for the back. We're going to use probably a pair of motor plates for the front, and what they do is they locate off of some of these studs, and that'll help me hook it to the dyno cart. Headers should be done next week, so we're in good shape. Exciting news for OJ. I picked up a bare trick flow cylinder head, and I hope it ships out this week. We're going to bring it in. I'm going to install bronze valve guides in there, and I've got a plethora of valves to try because I'm curious to see which shape of valves do the best with that head. Then I'm going to send it to Mr. Joe, and he's going to work his magic on it. I ordered a set of custom pistons. I already have a vision in my head of where I want this going here later on down the road in several months. So we got some custom Molly pistons coming, and I'm not going to say too much about those, but they're they're going to be awesome is what they're going to be. So, well, I'll just go ahead and talk about the pistons. They excite me, so you guys will get excited too. So we're going to be running about 14.5 to 1 compression on this. We're going to be using aluminum rods, R&R connecting rods in Florida. We're going to be making the rods for me. They're not going to be standard modular 4 length. The piston's going to be really short. That's the way I roll. I like very lightweight pistons and modern ring packs and all that sort of thing. So we were just tossing numbers back and forth with my sales rep at Molly. He thinks that the piston will only weigh 280 grams with all the lightning and designs and stuff that we did to it. That blows my mind because I'm from the world of 400, 500, 600 gram pistons, and 280 grams blows my mind. The pin weighs about 110 grams. The rings are about, I think, 18 or 19 grams. This is going to be fun. So my goal is 2 horsepower per cubic inch, and I'll do whatever I need to do to hit that goal. I think this is going to be 287 or something like that. I have to do the math again. Cubic inches. So we're going to have to make about, I don't know, 570, 580 horsepower, and it'll sound awesome doing it. So got some boxes in here. These are a pair of FE Power tunnel port heads that have just been ported, and I'm gonna get these out and washed, and we're gonna put these together for our customer Dennis. So out of the box, the heads flow, if I remember right, and if I don't remember right, I'll change it on the edit, but about 312 CFM on the intake side. They don't do very good on the exhaust side. They need a little help. On the intake side now, they flow about 370, 371. And we're going to set these up for a solid roller cam for Mr. Dennis. And I'm going to start on it now. Alright, so here's one of the heads. This is the driver's side head. And Mr. Joe put a burr finish on these. Sometimes the burr finish is really nice, and it helps. It's almost like a golf ball. So a golf ball goes really fast by making a boundary layer between the ball and the air. Same deal with here. We have found this finish to increase how the air and fuel mix, and keeps everything flowing smoothly instead of running along the port. Here's the business end. Really good valve job. Burr finish on the chambers. We're using some Ferrea valves. These are 2 1/4 and 1/7/5, 11/32 stem. Hollow stem valves for the intakes, very light. Standards on the exhaust side to change or to save a little bit of money. Hollow stem valves are very expensive, and the heavy intake valve is where you need to save the weight. We'll get these cleaned up a little bit more. I run a patch through the guides, make sure they're swabbed out and nice and clean, and I also give the valves a nice wash. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to start checking install heights. Alright, so we're moving through here and we're setting up the install height. So I'm just going to go over the parts real quick. We're using some Manley titanium valve spring retainers, some Manley Viton valve seals. So if you notice, I've got a lot of custom parts on these heads, and so I use custom when I can, but I'm also not in the habit of spending people's money if I don't have to. So in this situation, we went with a custom intake valve. The exhaust valve was a cut down valve from Ferrea. If you look at the differences, this guy is a radius lock, this guy's a square lock. So nothing wrong with that. Just need to be sure and use the appropriate locks. So we're using some comp cams locks for the exhaust valve, some Manley beadlock valves for the intake. Using some comp cams spring locators, and our valve springs are some Manley valve springs. I like Manley products. One thing that I will show that I have that's very important, okay? Manley is the only company that I've seen put this warning on their valve springs, and I want to get to something here in a second, but I'm going to read it to you real quick. Proper clearance from coil bind is critical to the performance of these valve springs. Too little clearance can overstress the part, while too much can promote spring surge. Neither is a good option. Ideal coil bind clearance is achieved at the open height listed on the label. Do not go below it, and only increase it by 50 thousandths maximum if necessary. So each spring manufacturer has their own spec on where they want you to install the spring and the open height and the coil bind clearance. Coil bind clearances can vary. I've seen a lot of pack springs recommend like 80 to 100. I've seen some pack springs and PSI springs that recommend 50. So I always go by the spring manufacturer's recommendations, and so they are essentially saying do not go below 150. Okay, so we will not do that, and I'm going to tell you why. I use a lot of Manley springs. I use a lot of pack springs. One time on an engine, I set up some Manley valve springs, and I read this, but in the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, all valve springs do the best at 50 or 60 thousandths from coil bind. You've all always heard that. So I set those springs up at, it was either 50 or 60 thousandths from coil bind, but it was below this open height that Manley recommended. Guess what happened? Drag race motor, couple valve springs cracked. No bueno. So I've also worked with some head porters, and they have asked me, you know, we're going to set these up with the valve springs that you supplied. Do you want me to install at 60 thousandths from coil bind, or do you want me to follow Manley's valve spring specs? I always go by this right here. So with that being said, our cam is like 700 lift on the intake valve gross and 730 gross on the exhaust side. So our install heights are going to vary by a little bit. This exhaust valve install height's 1865, intake side's 1835. So that's why we're using the plus 50 locks on this exhaust side. We're using the I think they're actually minus 50 locks on this intake valve. So there is a slight discrepancy in how the valve tips at full valve closed. That's not abnormal for an FE, okay? Everybody says, oh, it's a heresy to see differences between the tip heights on the valves. It's actually pretty normal for an FE, just because of the exhaust valves and everything that we use. You'd have to really sink the valve to even it up. So it doesn't really do anything abnormal for you, except changes the contact pattern on your valve stem a little bit, and it's just a little bit. So I'm rolling through here. I've got all my install heights set up, and got my valve spring pressure set. So on the exhaust side, we are at about 250 on the seat and 690 on the open. On the intake side, since we're a little bit closer to that number that Manley likes, we're at about 260, 265 on the seat, and again 690 on the open, since all the open heights are the same. So I've got all these set up. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to roll through, install all my valve seals. We're using mainly Dyno valve seals, and once that is done, we can mock up a retainer and some locks and check our retainer to seal clearance. So I'm going to get all my seals put on, and then we'll rock and roll. And here we got an assembled cylinder head. So what we'll do now is stick a spark plug in it and pour a cylinder. These heads take a extended reach spark plug, so you can't use a normal 3924 that you would use for, you know, Edelbrock head or trick flow head, nor can you use the old, you know, 45s and that sort of thing. So we'll get a spark plug in here, turn it over, and pour a chamber. Alright, we're starting on the second head. All the install heights were the same. And like I said before, these are hollow stem Ferrea valves. This 225 11/32 stem valve only weighs 128 grams. Not too shabby. Alright, here's our assembled pair of tunnel port heads. I'll get these boxed up and sent out to Mr. Dennis. If you guys have not subscribed to the channel, make sure that you do that before you miss out on any cool Ford stuff. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Be a Patreon to the channel, support the channel. You can give a monthly donation to help out the Dyno Mule projects that we have going on. And just appreciate you guys being a part of the channel. Leave your comments, and have a good weekend. I'll talk to you soon.